If only I had known the truth behind my mother's single eye, I wouldn't have turned my back on her. I wouldn't have let her die alone. Naima lived in a small, vibrant town. Her face carried a tale of sacrifice, marked by the absence of her left eye. It wasn't a rare sight in the village, where many carried scars from their past. But for her son, Kofi, the single eye was a curse that only reminded him of what he wished to forget. As a child, Kofi adored his mother. Naima was kind, compassionate, and wise beyond her years. She worked hard to care for him, to make sure he never lacked anything. But when he entered his teenage years, everything changed. Kofi became aware of how different Naima looked. The way her missing eye drew stares wherever she went, the way people would whisper behind her back. And though his mother remained as strong and loving as ever, Kofi felt nothing but embarrassment. His friends, who teased him relentlessly, often poked fun at her. "Hey Kofi, did your mom lose her eye to the sun?" they would laugh. At first, Kofi would try to laugh along, but it hurt. Slowly, he began to distance himself from Naima, avoiding her when he went out, pretending she wasn't there when his friends came over. One day, as Kofi was getting ready for school, his mother approached him with a warm smile. "Kofi, would you like me to walk you to school today?" she asked. Without thinking, Kofi snapped, "No, Mama, stay here. People are going to laugh at you. I don't want to be embarrassed." Naima's face fell, but she remained silent, her heart breaking in silence. Kofi hurried out the door, leaving her standing there, her single eye shimmering with tears. Days turned into weeks, and weeks into months. Kofi's attitude toward Naima grew colder. He stopped helping her with the chores, stopped looking her in the eye. Every time he saw her, he felt a wave of shame wash over him. His friends continued their taunts, and Kofi, unable to stand up for his mother, chose to be silent. One day, as the sun dipped behind the horizon, Kofi was late coming home from school. Naima, as always, grew worried. She had grown used to waiting for him, wondering if he was alright, but this time, there was an unease that she couldn't shake off. After a long wait, she decided to go to his school, hoping to catch a glimpse of him. She had heard stories of young children getting lost or injured, and her heart raced with fear. As she entered the school grounds, she saw a group of students playing soccer. There, she spotted Kofi, laughing with his friends, seemingly happy and carefree. Naima felt a pang in her heart. She approached him, her voice trembling. "Kofi, I've been waiting for you. I was worried." The moment Kofi saw her, his heart dropped. His friends noticed too, and they exchanged whispers. Kofi's face flushed with embarrassment. "What are you doing here, Mama?" he snapped, his voice harsh. "I told you never to come to school. People are staring." Naima stood there, her face pale with hurt. "Kofi, I only wanted to make sure you were okay." But Kofi didn't care. He was too consumed by his own fear of what others thought of him. "Don't come here again. You're embarrassing me." As the words left his mouth, Naima's heart shattered. She turned and walked away, but this time, she couldn't hold back the tears. Her son, the one she had loved and cared for all these years, had rejected her so harshly. Kofi's life moved forward, each new milestone pushing memories of his past further away. He graduated from school and found a good job. Not long after, he married Oma, a kind and beautiful woman. Shortly after their wedding, Kofi decided to move to another city for work. He and Oma started fresh in a new house, leaving his mother behind. Naima, on the other hand, remained in the same small, quiet home. She never stopped thinking about Kofi, her only child. She often sat by the window, staring at the road, hoping to see him walking toward her. She remembered the days when he was a little boy, running into her arms and sharing stories about his day. Those moments were her happiest memories, but they felt like a lifetime ago. Now, Naima's health was failing. Her body had grown weak, her steps unsteady, but the ache in her heart was far worse. She had never stopped loving Kofi, even after he pushed her away and left her to live on her own. Her days were filled with silence, broken only by her whispers of prayer for his happiness and safety. One morning, as the chill of the season crept into her small house, a neighbor came by with news. They told her that Kofi was living in another town, far from her, with his wife and a young child. Hearing this made Naima's heart swell with a bittersweet mix of joy and pain. She was happy to know he had a family and was doing well, but she also felt the sting of being left behind. Despite her frailty, Naima decided she had to see Kofi again. Her hands trembled as she packed a small bag. Each step felt heavier than the last, but her determination pushed her forward. She wanted to look into her son's eyes one last time, to tell him how much she loved him and how proud she was of him, even if he didn't want to hear it. As she boarded the bus to his town, Naima's mind was filled with memories of Kofi's laughter, his curious questions, and the way he used to hold her hand tightly when he was afraid. No matter what lay ahead, her love for him remained unshaken. She just hoped he would let her see him once more. After weeks of searching, Naima finally found Kofi's home. Her heart raced with hope, but also fears. Would he still reject her? Would he even recognize her? She knocked on the door. A small boy, barely 5 years old, answered. His eyes widened in fear when he saw Naima's face. "Who are you?" he asked, backing away. Naima smiled softly, though her heart ached. "I'm your grandmother, my child. I came to see your father." Before Naima could say more, the small boy peeked out from behind the door. He had overheard the heated exchange. His eyes widened in terror when he saw Naima standing there and, in a panic, he ran back into the house. He rushed to Kofi and tugged at his father's sleeve. "Daddy, Daddy," the boy cried, his voice filled with fear. "There's a lady outside. I'm scared. She looks like she has only one eye, like a monster." Moments later, Kofi appeared, his face hard and unwelcoming. Kofi's face hardened as he heard his son's words, and with fury in his eyes, he stormed outside. As soon as he saw Naima, he couldn't hold back his rage. His fist met her cheek with a resounding slap, the force of it sending her stumbling back. "Look what you've done!" Kofi yelled. "You scared my son. My baby was terrified of you. All because of your disgusting face. You ruined my life, Mama. Why can't you just leave us alone? Kofi, please, I'm your mother. I love you. I never meant to hurt you." Naima's heart broke all over again, but she mustered the strength to speak. "Kofi, I'm sick. I need you. I'm not going to live much longer." But Kofi didn't care. His face twisted with anger. "You never listened to me. You ruined my life, Mama. Stay away from me." Naima stood there, trembling, but she didn't leave. "Please, Kofi. I just want to see you once more. I just want to tell you how much I love you." But Kofi's face remained cold, devoid of any compassion. "Stay away from us, Mama. Stay far, far away. I never want to see you again. Don't ever come near my family. You are dead to me." He slammed the door in her face, leaving Naima standing alone in the rain. Her heart shattered as she stood there, trembling in the cold. She knew she didn't have much time left, but the love she had for her son still burned bright. Naima's frail body shook as she slowly turned away, her footsteps heavy with the weight of a mother's regret. She wished she could go back, make things right, but now it was too late. Months turned into seasons, and Naima's health deteriorated with every passing day. The once resilient woman now spent her days confined to a small, dimly lit room, her body frail but her heart still full of love for the son who had cast her aside. She often stared at the single photograph she had of Kofi as a child, his innocent smile a cruel reminder of the bond they once shared. One night, as rain softly tapped against the window, Naima quietly passed away in her sleep. The neighbors found her the next morning, clutching the same photograph against her chest. Her face bore an expression of peace, though her heart had left the world heavy with the burden of unspoken love and unanswered prayers. Kofi knew nothing of her passing. He had long since moved on, his life consumed by the demands of his family and work. His world was one of routines and responsibilities, with little space for memories of the mother he had shut out. But fate has a way of bringing closure, even when it's too late. Months after Naima's death, Kofi found himself in his hometown for business. It wasn't a planned visit, but as he drove past the narrow streets of his childhood, a strange pull drew him toward the old house where he had grown up. The house looked the same, yet different, weathered by time, its once bright walls now dulled and cracked. The garden, once lovingly tended, was overgrown with weeds. The sight stirred something in him, a fleeting pang of nostalgia mixed with unease. Kofi parked the car and approached the house, his steps hesitant. The front door was locked, the windows dark and lifeless. It was as though the house itself mourned its former occupant. As Kofi stood there, lost in thought, an elderly neighbor emerged from across the street. Her face lit up in recognition, though her eyes held a tinge of sadness. "Kofi," she called out, her voice tinged with both surprise and sorrow. "It's been a long time." He turned, forcing a polite smile. "Yes, it has. I was just passing by." The woman hesitated before walking closer, holding something in her hand, a sealed envelope, yellowed at the edges. She extended it toward him. This is for you," she said softly. "Your mother left it before she passed. She asked me to give it to you if you ever came back." Kofi stared at the envelope, his heart sinking. "Passed," he repeated, his voice barely a whisper. The woman nodded solemnly. "She passed away months ago. She never stopped waiting for you." Kofi's hands trembled as he took the envelope. It felt heavier than it should have, as though it carried the weight of years, of love, of regrets left unspoken. "Thank you," he murmured, his throat tight. He turned away, clutching the letter as he made his way back to his car. Later that evening, Kofi sat alone in a small, rented room. The envelope lay on the table before him, untouched. He stared at it for what felt like hours, his mind replaying every harsh word, every cold gesture he had ever directed at his mother. A part of him didn't want to open it, afraid of what it might reveal, or of the guilt it might confirm. Finally, unable to bear the silence, he tore the envelope open. Inside was a single sheet of paper, the handwriting familiar yet shaky, as though written by a hand weakened by time and illness. "Kofi, my beloved son," it began. Tears welled in his eyes as he read her words. "I've always loved you more than words can say. There is something you don't know about me, something I've never told you. The truth is, I gave you my eye." Kofi froze, his breath hitching. His hands gripped the paper tighter as he continued. "When you were a little boy, you ran into the street, and a truck hit you. The doctors said you would lose an eye, but I couldn't bear to see you in pain. I begged them to take my eye and put it in your socket instead. You see, every time you look at the world, it's through my eye, my love." The room seemed to close in around him as the words sank in. His mind raced back to his childhood, to vague memories of waking up in a hospital bed, his mother's hand warm in his, her face pale and tired but smiling. He had never questioned her then, never realized the price she had paid for his well-being. "I wanted to be strong for you, but I was weak. I should have told you this sooner. I hope that one day you will understand the depth of my love for you." The letter ended there, the words trailing off as though her strength had given out. Kofi's hands shook as he lowered the paper, his vision blurred by tears. The weight of her sacrifice, of her love, bore down on him like a crushing wave. He remembered the times he had lashed out at her, the bitterness in his voice, the coldness in his heart. He had called her names, pushed her away, and slapped her. And still, she had loved him enough to give him a part of herself, to endure his rejection without complaint. A sob tore from his throat, raw and unrestrained. He fell to his knees, clutching the letter to his chest as if it could somehow bring her back. "Mama," he whispered, his voice cracking. "I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry." But the room remained silent, offering no comfort, no forgiveness. The only sound was the muffled cry of a man who had lost everything he didn't realize he had. Outside, the world continued as if nothing had changed, but inside Kofi's heart, a storm raged, a storm of regret, of love, of a longing that could never be fulfilled. All he had left was the memory of a mother's love, so pure and selfless it had asked for nothing in return.